Good afternoon. 25 years ago then, where it all began as a manager for Jose. What's the reaction been like in Portugal to this one?
Well, a great excitement on one hand, but on the other hand, it's in the context of modern Benfica, a very successful Benfica. Unlike the last Benfica that José Mourinho took charge of 25 years ago as really a small-name coach. We know he's got an enormous amount of credit in Portugal, which he necessarily hasn't in other places now. He's burnt through a lot of that goodwill in recent years with diminishing returns. But it's the context of where Benfica are at the moment. The fact that they're a couple of weeks out from a presidential election, and there's a degree of controversy to the fact that Rui Costa, of course, a club legend and now the president of Benfica, has made a considerable financial commitment to José Mourinho by appointing him when he very well could be the outgoing president.
How might that change things then if he is the outgoing president? I guess if José Mourinho is in situ, whoever replaces Rui Costa hypothetically, well, unless he wants to sack him after a couple of weeks, we'll just have to stick with the decision that Rui Costa has made.
Yeah, and that would be quite a big call, wouldn't it, Rob, to fire José Mourinho 3 weeks after he takes charge. Now, of course, this is slightly complicated by one of the favourites, João Noronha Lopes, being someone who, it seems, would like to actually bring in Ruben Amorim, of course, former Benfica player, not in the best place at Manchester United at the moment. And the feeling was, if Amorim and Benfica part ways over the next little while, well, maybe he is someone that Benfica could pick up. Now, obviously, that won't be the case anymore, but that definitely affects the plans of the possible future president. And, of course, Mourinho would know that the future president wouldn't have him as first choice.
You use the phrase there, diminishing returns, to speak about José's recent CV as a manager. With that in mind, is Portuguese football about the level? Are we at a stage where the big jobs in the big 5 leagues are beyond José Mourinho now, would you say?
I think it's fair to say, Rob, and I think it's fair to say he's burnt a few bridges. I mean, on one hand, I think we have to give him enormous credit because it's clear he could be going to the Saudi Pro League, making several times what he'll be making at Benfica and what he was making at Fenerbahçe for quite an uncritical audience. But it's clear that he's still hankering after, still chasing after European glory. And I think he's taken a massive risk going back to Portugal because Portugal is one of the only places where he still has an unbelievable reputation, where people love him, where people still think he's the Mourinho of old. Whereas actually, he's coming back now and he's giving them the older version of Mourinho, the one that maybe doesn't dare to win the big matches, something he was criticised a lot for at Fenerbahçe and something that will make and break his tenure at Benfica. If he can't win those big matches and show the guts to win those big matches against Porto, who, of course, are chaired now by André Villas-Boas, his former staff member and, potential nemesis, who's the president of Porto. If he can't really show the guts and the invention to win those games, he'll be in trouble. And, of course, he became the first Fenerbahçe coach in history last season to lose twice at home to Galatasaray in the same campaign.
I was reading a little bit about his first spell at Benfica earlier on, which was short, not particularly sweet, stuck an ultimatum on the table about a contract extension and off he went soon after. I don't think he's mellowed over the years, has he?
No, he's not, Rob. But, this was a very different Mourinho, and I don't think many people blamed him for the Benfica job coming and going in those days. Benfica, structurally, sportingly, were at a much worse place than they are now. But I guess, in a way, he's sort of taking a bit of a risk as well as his reputation, hitching himself to the Rui Costa bandwagon. Rui Costa, of course, is a great name in the history of Benfica as a player, has received a lot of criticism recently as president, which is why there are so many different candidates to try and take over the job from him. So, Mourinho has put himself in a difficult position. It's been said earlier in his career, we talked about the resource he had at Chelsea, at Real Madrid, at Inter, where they spent a lot of money on his behalf. Now, look, Benfica have a really good squad. There's no doubt about that. But there is no excuse for not winning the league. So he is taking a massive risk with his reputation at this late stage in his career doing this.
He replaces a man that Premier League fans will also know a bit about in Bruno Lage. Losing 3-2 at home to Qarabağ, having been 2-0 up, is a pretty emphatic final straw. But was there a sense this was coming even before Tuesday night?
Yeah, definitely. And if you go back to last weekend, they're winning 1-0 against Santa Clara, against the 10 men of Santa Clara. And of course, if you look at the second part of the table in the Portuguese league, there are a lot of teams with far less resources than the big three. So these are games you're expected to win, and to win handsomely. They were 1-0 up against 10 men, and Nicolas Otamendi made a bad mistake right at the end, and they conceded a draw. Now, look, he could have gone after that game. I think if they hadn't have had the game against Qarabağ so quickly after, Bruno Lage would have gone, but I guess the reaction of the Benfica community to that result against Qarabağ has been an absolute uproar. People were incensed at the Estadio de Luz on the night. I think a lot of people look at it and think they probably should have got rid of Bruno Lage in the summer, despite the fact he's done great things for Benfica over 2 periods, didn't win the league, despite the departure of Ruben Amorim midway through last season. And it felt that maybe that would have been the right point to part ways. Although, if they had have done, they wouldn't have got Mourinho, would they?
Just one final word on Jose before we move on to the rest of the Champions League fixtures, particularly the ones this evening. It almost seems fitting as well that game number 4 in charge is Chelsea away, game number 5 is Porto away. It almost feels like he said, I'll take the job if there's something spicy to get my teeth into in the first couple of weeks where I can just rev everyone up a little bit.
Well, like we said before, look, no one can accuse him of ducking difficulty. There's no doubt about it. This is someone who, at this point in his career, is driven by ego, which really he's built all of his triumphs on.